welcome to the Future Series. I'm your host, Anthony Dan, and for those of you that are new to the podcast, we talk with real founders about building a business for the future. Whether you're scaling your business currently or starting your first side hustle, we aim to give you the nuggets of information to help you succeed in the future of work. Today we've got Sarah Mittiga on the podcast from Scaliify. How's it going, Sarah?
Hi, Anthony. It's all good. How are you? Thank you so much for having me.
No worries. Great to have you on. Going very well on this end. It's a heat wave in the UK at the moment, so it's a bit warm, but apart from that, it's going very well. Sarah, for everyone who's listening, would you be able to give us just a quick overview of yourself and Scaliify and what it is that you guys do?
Absolutely. Thank you so much again. So my name is Sarah Mittiga. I am originally from London. After studying German studies in the UK, I actually moved to Germany with the intention to stay for a year or two, gaining some work experience. I ended up staying 12 years in Germany and actually formed my career there. I worked in several different industries and also different functions, but my last function before starting Scaliify was as a consultant at KPMG, Germany. So we were focused on process optimization, digitization, innovation. These are all passion projects also of mine, all along my career. And then at one point I realized, I think there could be a need in the market, also globally, to continue these topics of innovation, process optimization, but also in HR. So my partner, Ben Bomer, he has been in HR for almost 20 years. And so we brainstormed that we would bring our skill sets together and form Scaliify. So the original idea is actually something different to what we are today. Originally, we thought that we could help startups and scale-ups and their founders to outsource HR. So purely outsource HR, help them scale, make sure that the founders are focused on their actual product and really selling the product and building the product, because HR isn't usually a skill set that a founder necessarily has, although a founder usually does write contracts, hire people in the first stage. And so we thought we could support with that. Ultimately, now almost 4 years on, we have become Scaliify, a company that supports SMEs. So I'd say our sweet spot is supporting companies between 100 and 1,000 employees from various industries, and we help them with digital transformation, with software implementation, with HR outsourcing. We do that nevertheless, but also HR strategy. We work with C-levels to decide how the company should grow or restructure in the future, maybe expand to new countries. And so it's been an interesting ride from the original idea to where we are today, but it's been very, very exciting, especially as I never thought I'd get into entrepreneurship, I have to say. So,
Amazing. Well, if we have a look back then, obviously, you mentioned you were at KPMG before this. Were you sort of thinking that would be it? You'd be on the way up to the top, partner, etc.?
Absolutely. I was actually set on that. I thought that's where I see my career. I was very happy at KPMG. I had amazing colleagues. I really enjoyed my time there, really interesting projects. But I have to say, so it was actually a very, very personal topic that actually got me thinking. So I had my mother was actually severely ill. And so that was a point where I realized, do I want to work 24/7 or not quite 24/7, but work a lot also on someone else's time that I can't completely organize myself? Or do I want to create more freedom for myself, that I'm a workaholic nevertheless, so I'll make time to work, but kind of on my own accord. And that was a situation where I realized, I think especially having someone where you want to also spend time helping, taking time out, maybe it could be a Monday or Wednesday, that's something that I realized that I wouldn't quite be able to create as harmoniously being an employee, no matter if it's KPMG or a different company. But today's organizations aren't always as flexible as I believe they should and could be, especially in those situations. So I'm very happy, because I have to say, just to share that maybe further personal note, so the year or two after I was able to visit my mum on a monthly basis, I was able to work from there, able to accompany her on her therapy treatment, and actually was there when she passed away last year. So it was a very, very intense couple of years. So being able to have that flexibility as a founder is incredible, and really shows that it was the right decision for me.
Yeah, I'm really sorry to hear that, but it's great that you've been able to spend that time with her for sure. And when you were at KPMG, obviously you said you had a few different roles. You left Germany, didn't you? Is that at the same time as you were founding Scaliify?
Yeah, so actually, I knew several years before I left Germany that I actually did really want to leave Germany. Germany was never meant to be my final location. It was meant just to be for a few years. But I loved it and I loved the career opportunities that I was able to gauge. And so I'd had it in my mind that maybe I want to move back to London or move somewhere else, but I honestly didn't know where to. That was the biggest issue that I had. And so I was actually on holiday in Dubai, a place that I never thought I would move to or even like necessarily. And on that holiday, I completely fell in love with the city. So I actually went back to Germany and I realized, okay, this is the place. And Ben and I were brainstorming ideas, and then it just kind of all came together that, okay, I need more freedom of time, freedom of location. Dubai is the epicenter of innovation, of digitization, and of also a lot of entrepreneurs. So I just felt like it was the place to be based, perfect with time difference to Europe. And so we set out to move away from Germany. So we left Germany to move to Dubai, about 3 years ago now, start Scaliify. And we work with clients in the UAE and Europe. So it's actually perfect because we're here on the ground, and especially in the UAE, I believe that that proximity is valued a lot higher than it is in Europe. In Europe, we can do a lot of things digitally. Remote projects are not an issue at all. Whereas here on the ground in the UAE, it's definitely better if you're there in person, can just pop by the office and really support clients.
Yeah. Well, okay, there's a couple of things I'd love to delve into. One of them is you mentioned that you didn't think that you'd be an entrepreneur and set up your own company. Where did that sort of initial spark or interest, was that from, obviously you're talking about your mum and you guys looking at how you can get these freedom of time or freedom of location? Is that the spark that then ignited this entrepreneurial thought and conversation?
If I look back, I mean, with hindsight, you always see it a lot clearer than in the moment. I would say the beginnings were also at the beginning of my career. So at the beginning of my career, I actually worked a lot with startups. So I had a huge project that ran just with startups. So I was just working with founders at the time. Then I actually went to a startup myself as an employee. And
Nice.
I always see myself as more as like a doer, but within an ecosystem or a framework and not the one necessarily initiating it.
Yeah.
So I then decided to go from the startup to KPMG, which was obviously 180-degree change, as some might say. But I believe I was always more of an entrepreneur, if you'd like to call it that. So I loved coming up with new ideas. I was always the one challenging the status quo, asking how we can change things and coming up with ideas. But I have to say, ultimately, entrepreneurship is also a bet on yourself, and you don't have that safety net necessarily. And so I guess when everything kind of came together with my personal situation, then me realizing a location that I would actually genuinely like to move to personally, and then having the idea for Scaliify, it all almost came together and was the perfect opportunity to say, okay, you know what? I think all these little bits and pieces are now at the right point to just start. And I have to say, I either do things 100% or not at all. So I trust myself 100% in every decision I make, because it takes me a while to make a decision, I have to say. I really think things through, or I follow my gut. But when I make the decision, I'm in 100%. So that's what happened at that point. And so I actually came back from Dubai, and I remember we had a huge event at KPMG, and I remember I told my closest colleagues, I'm moving to Dubai, and everyone thought I was just completely crazy and daydreaming. And it's funny because some of them have even come out to Dubai and visited, and they're like, oh, I remember, when you were on holiday and you came back and you told us. And it's actually come to fruition. So it's nice to see that. But at the time you also think, is this just a dream? Will we make it? Will the company even exist in a couple of years? And that's something you cannot know at the time. But yeah, it's interesting to see how things have evolved.
Yeah. And at that sort of inception point then of Scaliify, obviously it's pulling on your experience, your husband's experience as well, and sort of blending that together to be able to offer these services to clients. Did you start building it on the side as a bit of a side hustle, or was it a full stop KPMG and then both feet in? We're not only going to set up the company, but we're also moving country.
Yeah. Like I said, I don't really do hard things. So, yeah, I went full throttle. So I had my first client, which I'd co-pitched while I was on gardening leave at KPMG. So I had a couple of months before officially starting Scaliify, and that's where I co-pitched and got my first client, which I started on the first day leaving KPMG. So it was a pretty blunt change from
Nice.
one to the next. And yeah, I did start just with one client, so it was smaller at the beginning, and then obviously scaled over the months and years after. So it's definitely grown, but it was not a side hustle at the time. I was so focused. I honestly really truly believed that I'd stay at KPMG for maybe even decades to come. So once I decided it wasn't the case, yeah, I kind of planned the
Yeah.
move. So the move was definitely planned in advance, set everything up, and also how do you create a company abroad? Is that even the right decision? Do we start the company in Germany? All of these questions were things that we needed to get consulted on and understand what's best for that move. So it took a bit of time.
Yeah, and what was your mindset like in that period? Because I know I've spoken to a lot of entrepreneurs who have either the sort of imposter syndrome, or they're fully confident because they've just been doing exactly the same thing. Or how was it with yourself? A bit of both.
So a bit of both, I'd say. And actually, so Ben knows this, I always say this. The first month, I thought I'd made the worst decision of my life because Ben and I are very, very different, and our clients know this. And I wasn't sure if it was really the right mix ultimately. And because we just went full throttle into this, we didn't test it. We didn't test how we would work together, even though we know each other very, very well. So I have to say that first month, I thought it was the worst decision in the world. And definitely the whole imposter syndrome came in because I had worked with HR departments in the past, but I'd never been an HR department. I'd never been an HR manager in the operations. So going from consulting to actually working very intensely with HR actual issues and preparing payroll, these were all very new topics to me. And so in that first instant, it was definitely challenging. Whereas now I definitely feel like I'm part of HR. I feel like I understand the function very, very well, can also represent it towards C-level and really make sure that HR has a great standing in organizations, as it should. But it took a couple of months for me to feel fully comfortable in that position.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting talking to people, hearing these different sides of mindset and how it's working and how you're getting on with it. And a lot of the time it is like the full, oh my God, is this the right thing? Da, 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 through to, oh my God, this is great. Like, got the first client on, we're rocking and rolling. Let's go. How was the rest of that? How was your first sort of 12 months then after that?
So something I've noticed maybe in the last 3 years, to maybe expand on that, because in the first 12 months we didn't really invest into Scaliify, so we were just building. So we were building partnerships, we were building our client network, but we didn't really reinvest into the company as much as we do now. So that's a huge change over the years because at the beginning we didn't know if it would work. So every penny we made, we thought we would keep just in case we don't have clients for a few months. That moment never came over the last years, but still we were very apprehensive at the beginning whether or not it would work as well as we planned. So I'm very happy to say that it did, but nevertheless, we were very cautious in the first 12 months. So we really took on almost, I think, every project that was possible, we took on that worked with our skill set. And so we didn't even outsource that much. So we have freelancers at hand. So our structure is very, very lean. And so when we don't have a project that we can do ourselves, it doesn't fit our skill set, we have a range of freelancers that we can bring on board so that clients really get the perfect support for their needs. And in that first year, we almost took on all projects because we thought, okay, we just really want to deliver and make sure it's at a standard that we want to also provide the client with. Whereas in the second year, we then outsourced more and really kind of lent into also building the company as a company and not just delivering projects. So it was a mindset change, yeah, for sure. And it's really exciting to see that also develop because in the last 3 years, as an entrepreneur, also our resources have just changed enormously. When you look at what tech offers us now compared to 3 or 4 years ago, it's just a very, very different level. So also building a company with that at hand is a lot more fun now, I have to say, at least for us.
Yeah, it's great. It's obviously been going really, really well, and you guys are going gangbusters. Did you ever get any mentorship or guidance through that period?
I have to say no. So I did join one retreat that had 10 other founders in it and tried to learn from each other. They were very different industries and it wasn't quite exactly what we were doing, but it was great to see insights, especially regarding also money mindset, because it's a very different situation when you are responsible for a company. Also, what salary do you pay yourself? Do you pay yourself dividends? What do you keep in the company, et cetera, et cetera. So all of these different topics were very challenging at first, especially as you're the one deciding what happens with everything, how you build the company, what happens with the financial. And yeah, that was a challenge. But now I've joined actually a community at the end of last year, also with about 200 founders around the world. And I think it's one of the most inspiring communities that I have had access to. And I am able to learn from lots of different industries, because ultimately I truly believe in entrepreneurship. We all have the same issues. They're just labeled differently depending on industry and also maybe experience. But generally we all go through similar challenges that you can then talk to each other about and work through it, because you have different perspectives. So I have to say that that's been enormously vital also to our growth.
Yeah, I find it great, which is like one of the reasons why we're doing this podcast as well, is to try and bring a lot of that information, those learnings to founders around the world, so they can then learn from it and then implement it, whether they're in this sort of industry or something completely different. I think it's so important. With that as well, obviously looking in the future and learning from other founders, I know you touched saying that with technology nowadays things are different and it's getting very exciting. How is that changing the guys the way that you work with AI? Because I know obviously you're implementing or helping implement part of your businesses anyway, technologies for these companies from 100 to 1,000. How have you seen AI come in and affect that process?
Very, very differently, I have to say, because I would say we work with AI very regularly and we want to be on top of things and really be able to consult our clients to the best of our abilities. However, and this is something we see with normal software that we implement, and I'm talking about just basic automation or just really implementing systems instead of just Excel, companies are not usually in control of their data. They're not really sure where all their data lies. They're not 100% sure how their processes are actually being not only created but also lived. So there's very few process documentation situations. When we join a client, we usually ask how they're currently set up. So we ask for all the data, all the processes, and clients often really struggle. So when we implement software, we're usually really starting like at the very beginning, because it's usually like silo knowledge. So one person knows everything, or someone left the company recently and that knowledge has left the company with them. And it's such a pity. And so this is why we love making sure that companies are able to make data-driven decisions through software. But that's just the foundation. So I would say do not use AI if you don't know where your data is, what your data tells you, and don't have that solid foundation. Because once you have that, then you can build upon it. You can start automating. You can start working with AI. But if you don't have that first level foundation, I would say companies are actually doing themselves more harm than good using software like AI. In our project at the moment, I would say AI in HR is often discussed in the whole recruiting process. So it's probably the first kind of process in HR that is affected by AI, just because we see a lot of candidates nowadays using AI to create their CVs, their cover letters, and then we see companies using AI on the other end to assess the applications, and it's ultimately AI speaking to AI, which I think it's our role also in HR to break that up and to actually see where is the human element necessary and also beneficial, and where is the AI element necessary and beneficial. And so I love the idea of AI and humans working together. And I also see AI agents as part of org structures in the future. But I think we have to make true conscious decisions where that will be. And so I have one client in particular at the moment where we're not only discussing AI in HR recruiting, but also AI in like company operations and in hiring skills, so that the organization of the future for this company will also have the employees that are able to use the software, to use the resources that we have at hand, and really make sure that the company can grow without necessarily growing the headcount as substantially as we would if we didn't have the tech at hand. So it's a very interesting discussions that we're having, but I would say we work with a wealth of industries and different client sizes, but it's very rare to really be at the forefront of this technology. Most are struggling with the basics.
Yeah, it's really interesting. When you say increase headcount, I assume you mean human headcount, not agents as well.
Yeah, it's a difficult discussion. I actually, of course, I meant human headcount at this moment in time, but I recently read that today's managers are the last managers to actually manage a purely human workforce. So I think that's definitely something that we need to consider what that means. And that means that companies will have agents or other types of employees within the organization. And then the interaction between human and AI is going to be essential. And what I think is really interesting at the moment is the whole discussion of cutting back human headcount, to be specific, but due to AI. And at the moment, seeing the discussion of large corporates cutting down their headcount because they say, okay, AI can take over. And then you have other examples of companies, for example, IKEA, that introduced AI, kept their employees, and were able to increase their revenue and profit substantially. And so it's about, I would say, the cost of firing and then at one point rehiring and then maybe also upskilling new employees. I would theorize that it's probably more expensive than keeping the employees, upskilling them in-house and using AI alongside humans. So this is a decision that companies will have to make in the next, I'd say, 12 months, how they want to build their organizations and whether they will be cutting the headcount. But I believe truly that humans are essential to organizations, and they might not be essential in their current roles, but then we have to be able to develop them. And that's the role of HR. And so I'm a huge advocate that HR should actually be at the center of the discussion of HR and AI enablement. I don't believe this is a topic that should lie with the CTO necessarily. I think this should be with the CHRO, because ultimately it's humans and tech, and we need to enable our workforce, and our workforce isn't just comprising of engineers who understand tech, but everyone. And so I believe this function should evolve from just purely being a head of HR or CHRO to something like, chief people and AI transformation officer or enablement officer. I really believe companies need that.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I've not really sort of thought about it like that from a managerial point of view. Obviously, your human, emotional side or skills that you develop to manage people and get the best out of them is typically very different to how to implement systems and processes and technology and make it run efficiently. Those typically don't lie with the same person, but if the managers of the future are going to have to manage agents that are technology led plus people that are very emotionally led, it's going to have to be a very different look on a manager that is there today. Same with a founder who will have to manage a team that are emotionally led plus their agent workforce. Do you think there's going to be a lot of upskilling? Well, there already is obviously with AI now, but do you think there'll be a lot of upskilling from maybe the technical side that need to learn more emotional skills to manage people as well as agents?
I think there will be upskilling needed either way. I believe that agents will need to be programmed and they might not need as much hand-holding as the human counterparts in the upskilling and in the whole kind of reorganization and restructuring of companies. I think it's really interesting. We have actually one example at the moment. I don't know if you saw, but Atlassian recently, I think 2 months ago now, promoted their chief people officer to now be responsible also for all their engineers and the whole kind of tech area. So that exact kind of change that I have seen coming now since end of last year, beginning of this year, has actually been done by a company now, which is really interesting to see. So I'm actually trying to see what they also share on insights, because I think lots of companies can learn from those role models that are kind of trying it out and leading the change, so to speak.
Yeah, fascinating. I'm sure we could talk about this for hours. What does the future of Scaliify look like? What's your sort of next year, 2 years, 5 years?
So at the moment, we're looking into creating also more scalable solutions. So in the last 3-4 years, we've been solely focused on projects, so classical consulting projects. And so now we're actually trying to create more solutions. We're working on an HR tool finder that companies can then just use for free to find out which software is the best software for them. Because I think this is something that we often see. Companies usually bring us in once they've chosen a software and they ask us to implement it. And usually the IT infrastructure isn't maybe the best for that choice, but it's almost too late. So we'd love to come in a bit earlier to help companies really choose the right software. So that's something we're currently working on. We recently launched a very Germany-specific solution for freelancers and companies working together. The compliance topic that is very scalable. So really looking at the pain points of our clients. So whether it's the UAE or the German-speaking market that we're currently very focused on in Europe, we're really looking at what do they need, how can we build solutions, whether it's with tax advisors, lawyers. We have very strong partnerships there. That's basically what we're currently rolling out and also investing in. That what I mentioned earlier, which we didn't do the first couple of years, we're currently very much invested in, because we want to really create extra value for our clients. We don't just want to be another consultant.
Yeah, no, indeed. That's great. And just before we wrap up as well, if anyone's listening that is looking at changing their software or is really interested in having a chat, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Probably LinkedIn, I have to say. I'm quite active on LinkedIn, so I'd love to get in touch with anyone who wants to discuss AI and HR or anything else we mentioned today.
Excellent. Sarah, it's been really good to have you on and have a chat and hear your journey, but as well hear about what's happening at the moment on the forefront with HR and AI as well, which I'm sure would have made a lot of people think. But yeah, thank you so much for taking the time and coming on.
Thank you, Anthony. Speak to you soon.
Brilliant. And thank you everyone for listening, and we'll see you next time.